Hi, John. How are you this week?
Hi, Elliot. How's it going with you?
Things are okay. Things are okay. So, you too?
Yeah, things are good. I think, as we've already talked about many times in 2021, this is the year of focus on domestic terrorism. And two things I wanted to chat with you about. One is I saw a press release from DOJ that a second member of the so-called Boogaloo Boys, unquote, pled guilty to conspiracy, but conspiracy to provide material support to Hamas, which, given their anti-Semitism, doesn't surprise me, but sort of does surprise me. Did you see that?
I did see that, and it reminded me of some conversations you and I have had over the last 6 months or so about not only the continued increase in domestic terrorism, but the growing connection between internal or domestic and international terrorism.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
each of those buckets of terrorism are obviously very troublesome, but to see them starting to get together and work together just takes the threat and heightens it that much more.
Yeah, in this particular case, according to the release, he pled guilty to one count of conspiracy to provide material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations. To your point, international terrorism. He faces a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison, and this was investigated jointly by Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. But like you said, the connection, it can't be ignored. It's not, again, not incredible, but in a way sort of is. The good news, I guess, is there are statutes, so he pled guilty to violating one of them. So that's good. But also, I noticed that Attorney General Garland testified this week for appropriations for DOJ, and his very first statement in his oral statement to the committee was that his budget supports his commitment to addressing both international and domestic terrorism.
Yes, and that's he's made statements about that before. We've seen strong statements from various elements of law enforcement and the Department of Justice that is a priority, and it's good to see that there is alignment between budget-related things and public statements, because you really need budget support to make a lot of those public statements actually come true.
Yeah, he's asked for an increase of $45 million for the FBI for domestic terrorism investigations, and interestingly, $40 million for U.S. attorneys to manage what he calls increasing domestic terrorism caseloads. So again, not good news, but positive that that U.S. attorneys both need the funding, and obviously they're going to be bringing more cases in an area that, again, we've talked about many times, is more and more such a major problem for our country.
Indeed. I just want to circle back to the DOJ release about the Boogaloo Boys issue, and you mentioned that ATF was involved, and part of the reason there was that the activity involved manufacture of components for illegal firearms to be sold to Hamas. And again, as you mentioned, this investigation was very multifaceted, from FBI, field office, the Joint Task Force, and ATF. And I think we'll continue to see that federal and state level law enforcement will be combining on these investigations, because they're complicated, and where the first piece comes from that gets them on the trail can be a lot of different things. It wasn't indicated here that it was an SAR, but
Right.
We know that many of these things do start with a SAR or a phone call from a financial services company or someone else out in the public.
A final point related to what you just said. We've talked to some of our peers in the financial world, and obviously they're charged with, dealing with SAR policies and procedures. And when it comes to domestic terrorism, some banks are being proactive, other banks are being cautious, depending on what their lawyers tell them. And it's interesting, at least anecdotally, I've heard from several that internal counsel in some cases says, we want to hold back potentially filing a SAR because it could be First Amendment rights, which again, we're both lawyers. That's insane because if you think that transactional activity was suspicious, A, there's a safe harbor that we're both well aware of that protects you. And B, I think you'd be hard pressed to make a First Amendment case if it has to do with violence. So, you can make those general statements if you like. I don't mean you. I mean, they can. But I think we're gonna hear more. I'm curious what our clients, what the community is going to be saying about this 6 months to a year from now, because the pushback that some are getting from counsel, in my view, seems to be a little off center. And so since the FBI, DOJ, U.S. attorneys are going to be focusing more and more on domestic terrorism, our colleagues have to do the same, and obviously be careful about what they do, but also not be hesitant because of potential issues that really seem to me to be a stretch.
I agree, but it is a complicated area, and there isn't a great deal of law in terms of guidance. So it is putting these counsel in the position of trying to look into the very murky crystal ball. But I agree with you. I think that being thoughtful and practical is important, but overly conservative is probably not the track to take.
So more to come from both of us on this as we go through 2021.
Yeah, John, I want to remind you of something brand new for you and I, and that is that this podcast is now available through Spotify. So our entire catalog of This Week in AML and AML Conversations, in addition to being available in the other sources that we've talked about over the last number of months, is now available on Spotify in their podcast section. So for those of you who continue to pass our name around, or if you're new to us, that's a great source that you can find us every week.
Oh, that's excellent. And since we are doing some plugs, I know we're going a little bit over time. I want to remind people that we have a whole site off of our website dedicated to our project, Empowering Together Women in AML. So there's a whole series of interviews with key leaders in the AML and financial crime prevention space. So if you get the opportunity, take a listen, look at some of the content, including some of what we think are excellent interviews about career pathing and sponsoring and mentoring and all sorts of things like that.
All right, John, you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you next week.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.